The fire service is a lifestyle. Some of us grew up knowing that this is what we would do. Others found it later in life. We all have a story to tell. We live a career of experience and knowledge. But what happens when we retire? All that knowledge and experience walks out the door. Welcome to Capture the Knowledge.
Jason Murphy, engineer at Metro Fire. You've been here for over 30 years now. We want to thank you very much for doing an interview on Capture the Knowledge, and we've just got a bunch of questions to talk about with you. Tell me about your early time in the fire service.
I started here in '89 with Citrus Heights Fire, and I had a predecessor agency with Folsom Fire for about a year and a half to that. It was just a lot different. I kind of felt being very young and starting with a new agency when you come in and there's a lot of senior gentlemen that you work with in the houses. It seems like now the guys are a lot younger coming in, but that could have been me in my early 20s. It just seems like it was just different back then. I think the way the guys talked to one another, things weren't totally serious, but you took your job serious. I think if you had a problem with somebody, you could actually talk to them about it and not have that person get offended or upset about it. It seems like there was a lot more pride taken back in the day of the equipment and the stations. One of the things that I really noticed is that the uniforms that are not worn nowadays. You see a lot of guys not even in their uniform pants during the daytime. And to me, that was just one of the rules that we had to abide by, at least until 5 o'clock. But even after then, you still never caught guys in shorts and slides and some of the things that some of these guys wear around the station. It was just a different time. I felt 24 hours a day, it was a professional department inside and out. The department that I remember working for, and obviously I'm still working for, it seemed like there was a lot more action put behind words. It's like, we have all these, I don't say acronyms, but like the vent flow or, whatever that might have been. There was none of that back in the day. It was go inside, fight fire, do your job, and come outside. There was no, well, we have to make sure that it's not traveling with this wind direction and then move the nozzle over here or do any of that. It was go inside, fight fire. So the on-the-job training back then, it seemed we would have a lot more fires back then. It just, things burned a lot more back in the day. That's when a lot of the fireground training, if you want to call it that, would take place. That's when a lot of the younger guys would be called up on the roof by the senior guys or inside to learn about the burn patterns and things like that. It was more real life teaching than a lot of the classroom stuff that we do now. And I know the fire service has changed in the 30-something years that I've been here. I do understand that, but that's the difference. It seems like there's a lot more classroom teaching versus the outside real world. And I understand that, we're, the hands are tied, so to say, by the EPA for burning and doing all these other things. There's just a lot of hoops to jump through, where back in the day there wasn't. You'd get a house and you'd burn it. There was no, well, we got to wait 30 days for a permit or whatever else.
Right.
They would light the house on fire until you get inside and go find the fire and put it out. There wasn't a lot of classroom prior to that. It was pretty much get inside the door and go fight fire. That's how you learn the trade. Those were the guys when you would walk into the firehouse and you knew that they've been around for a while. It's the way they carry themselves. It's the way they spoke. It's the way they taught. When those guys would talk, you would listen 110% attentive to what they were talking about, because you were going to learn something from them. Even if it was non-fire related, they would talk about some of the jobs that they'd have on their days off. A lot of these guys would have plumbing, electrical, carpentry, and just listening to those guys just share their life experiences and the things that they learned, you would learn by just listening to them and then actually going and approaching them and asking questions and going to some of these off-day jobs with them, and even learning around the firehouse was such a different thing, because they actually would just tell you like some of the stories and some of the calls that they've been on and what they've learned from it. So that's when, you know, they would, like, I remember 20 years ago when I was on this call, and you just would just think like, God, that was 20 years ago and you still remember this.
Yeah.
Just the intensity in their voice and the passion that these guys had for the job, I've noticed that's one of the big differences too. It was a different time back then. The guys didn't really sign up for the title of the job or the pay. They were doing it because it was almost like a calling for them. And as silly as it may sound, it's just that's what they wanted to do, and they gave it 110%. It just was a different time back then, where I've noticed that some of the younger generation, they're here for the job title. That's just my personal feeling. Mm-hmm. Where some of the guys actually do the job for the love of the job, and you'll notice the difference. That's one of the big things that I see is some of these guys are here for the job title, like I said, and the passion's not there. They show up, they do their couple days, and then they go home, which is fine. I mean, everybody has their thing, but the passion's just not there. That would have been probably my old truck captain that I worked for almost 20 years. Just the knowledge that he passed on, the brotherhood that we had. It was such a close-knit crew back then that the word trust meant everything back then. I trusted this guy with my life. I trusted him with personal thoughts and just everything else. It was just so different nowadays, where back then you'd actually talk to your crew and it stayed kind of in that house. It didn't travel outside that house. It wasn't gossip. It wasn't rumored. It was a different kind of brotherhood back then. Mm-hmm. And like I said, when you work with somebody that close for that long, the bond that you have is, I want to say, unbreakable. That was Ed Kruger. He was one of those guys that you kind of looked up to, like, you know, someday I want to be, if I was ever going to promote to captain, he would be the guy I wanted to be like, just because he could joke, he could be serious when he had to. He just had everything in my eyes that a captain should have.
Right.
He led the crew with ferocity, and he would always take time out to teach. After every call, we would always learn something. And the biggest thing for me is I know that he had my back on every single call. He was my eyes watching over me, like when I was doing my job. Mm-hmm. And that said a lot. Yeah, he was the very first captain I worked for, as far as like when I started my time on the truck. Mark Jacobson was the engine captain on 23. So I worked with Mark and Sandy Milne, and those guys were great too. They knew their jobs like nobody's business. I didn't really have a lot of engine time over at 23. I was on the engine for maybe a little while before I was called over to the truck. But it was just a different kind of trust that I had. You know, mm-hmm. Especially having a senior captain like that say, hey man, we want you on the truck with us. That was like, wow, I'm being called up to the big leagues. You know, that was the thing back in the day. I think it said something about my work ethic and who I was as a young fireman. I wanted to learn my trade, and I wanted to be good at it. The fact that I never took for granted that I was on the truck and I needed to stop learning or anything like that never even entered my mind, because every day is a different day here at work. Mm-hmm. And the minute that you think that you know everything, you're going to get taught something, and it's probably going to be in a bad way. You know, there's been a lot of calls, but I can honestly say that there was probably one incident where we were up on a roof. It was late night. We were cutting a bunch of holes, heavy fire conditions. I don't know if I got complacent up there, but I took a step back and I almost fell off the roof. Ed was up there, and he grabbed me. And like I said, that kind of changed my whole perspective on the job, as far as, like, I don't want to say being complacent, but just kind of, I guess, not really having my head in the game where it should have been. That right there was kind of like, wow, that could have been a career ender right there. And so I guess it was kind of like, you need to be on your A game 110% on every call, so something like this doesn't happen. You know, to be very honest with you, before I had kids, I mean, kid calls would bother me. Probably just dealing with anything that had to do with a child that got hurt. That's always been a very hard thing to swallow, and I usually don't talk about it very much. I've seen some bad kid calls. I've been on fatal fires with children and stuff, and it's just those are the ones that hit home. You know, like I said, there's been so many that really not one in particular comes to mind. It's just that, you know, like I said, that's how I think we let a lot of our inner, I don't say demons out, but just to make fun and just have a good time and just laugh sometimes. You know, there's just those calls that make you laugh. And like I said, honestly, there's been quite a few, and there's not really one in particular that stands out to me. But like I said, I definitely have had my fair share of good laughs. You know, that's the thing. It's like, I think unless you do this job, no one's really going to understand it. What it takes to be away from your family for, you know, obviously we're scheduled for 2 days. You have to have that happy balance of understanding the commitment to make things work. This isn't your regular 9-to-5 job where you come home, you know, you get up and go to work the next day. You know, we're here for 48 hours and we see things that most people don't see. And I think you have to have a family that's strong and understands that you're going to have bad days when you come home. It's not always easy to talk about the things that we've seen because, like I said, most people don't understand it. You know, just the things that you'll never forget. And I think if you have that happy balance, I think it's going to be an easy transition. It's just sometimes when you come home, you need that check-in time of, hey, I just left work. I need a little time to kind of regroup myself to the home life activity because it's obviously different. You know, if you're married and you have kids, you know, you come home and the wife's like, oh, here's the kids, you know, right away. And it's like, no, look, I've been up all night. I just need a little time to regroup and then let me re-engage into the family. I can honestly say, talk to the guys that have been here for a while. Ask them how things work at home, when they get home, how things are balanced and how they're managed. Not everybody's home life is the same. So talk to maybe more than 1 or 2 people because, like I said, I'm going to use this adage just like baking a pie. You can take a little sugar from one, a little flour from the next. If it's a cherry pie, you don't like cherries, we'll use apples. You have to make it your own, but it's not really a bad idea to get other input on how other people balance it, so you have at least a playbook to go by to say, hey, you know, on this day when I come home day 1, I just really am not going to be 100% engaged, but day 2 I'll have a full night's rest and I'll be more engaged that day. So let's find that happy balance of, you know, I'll do what I can when I get home day 1, but the next couple of days I'll be more engaged.
Sure.
So you got to find that happy medium, especially like I said, if the wife is working or not working. So like I said, every situation is going to be a little different. You just got to take what works for you, but make sure that you talk to the guys that have been around a little while who are married with kids or even married without kids, because sometimes there's that little nugget that you're going to get from the guy that maybe doesn't have kids and goes, oh, that's going to work too if we can incorporate this. As a new firefighter, I can honestly say that I wish I knew how it was going to change me as a person. It changes your perspective on how you see things, how you see people, how you just look at things differently. Guys coming into this job think it's all sunshine and roses. And like I said, you have your good days and you have your bad days, and you're going to have to take it with a grain of salt. You're going to have to find a way to cope with these changes and realize that this job is going to change you. I can honestly say that I've become less patient as a person, but I try to look at things from 2 sides instead of one-sided. You know, I guess you would really have to ask the people that are closest to me, because it's really hard for me to say how I've changed, because like I said, it's kind of seeing yourself in the mirror every day and you don't notice any changes, but people that haven't seen you in a long time, they'll notice the little changes. Like I said, it's one of those questions that only, I guess, someone that's been around you can answer. I think, to me, one of the biggest things that I've noticed is the lack of quality time that the crews actually spend together. I think one of the things that I've really noticed over the years is the lack of true 100% attention even at the dinner table. There's cell phones at the dinner table. There's a TV going. There's not that connection that we used to have back in the day, like when I first came on. It was all about the crew. It was about the firehouse. It was about the apparatus. It's not that all that we talked about, but it was more of a deeper connection with the job to the guys you work with. There wasn't any like outside distractions as far as like guys on their phones during dinner time or the TV blaring in the background as far as, you know, like trying to kill that dead time. There was plenty of conversation to be had at the dinner table. I kind of feel that we've really gotten away from that. I just don't know if people have forgotten how to truly conversate with people when you're that close to somebody, if people are that uncomfortable where they need that shield of this to think of something to talk about or not engage. It just seems like that's one of the biggest things that I've noticed is just that the lack of connection that we have now. A lot of guys seem to be on their phones when, you know, we're in the rigs driving. If that's what they want to do, that's fine, but I guess for me it's kind of like you're taken away from the crew. Another set of eyes for me as an engineer, when I can see a lot, but if you're on your phone on the other side of the cab, I can't see what's coming from that direction. And if you're so engrossed in your phone that some guy's going to blow the light and I don't see it, that's going to cause a problem for us. That never happened back in the day. And of course, obviously cell phones weren't really a big thing like the smartphones, obviously. I mean, we had cell phones back then, but they weren't like they are now. There's such a distraction to the fire service and just inside the fire station. You know, that's one of the things that really seems to get to me. It's just that lack of communication and the attentiveness around the dinner table. You know, I mean, there are reasons obviously I would understand, like if your wife is expecting, if a family member's sick, you're kind of waiting for that phone call. Do I need to come home? Do I need to do this? I understand that. Maybe put it behind you or, you know, somewhere that you could at least see it ring or whatever else. But like I said, we never had any of that at the dinner table. It was, you know, badge shirts off. There was never any rank at the dinner table. It was family time. You know, there was, like I said, there was no rank at the dinner table. We were all equals back then. Open conversation, adult conversation. If you had a problem with somebody, that was the time to air it out. Mm-hmm. You know, you were with family. It was a safe place to talk. You know, and then, like I said, it was just the place to be. You know, the firehouse dinner table or even coffee table sounds silly, but 90% of the world's problems could be solved there. You know, that's the honest to God truth. Like I said, it would bring back that crew continuity that I feel that a lot of the stations are lacking. And I really think that you would have a better connection with your crew, with the station. Yeah, I definitely feel that would be a really good thing, and maybe some guys would have a hard time doing that, but I really think if they gave it a shot, I really feel that they would notice a difference. There would be a lot more crew interaction at the dinner table. To me, what the core value of the fire service would be, and I know this is going to sound cliche, but it's service before self. We're here for the public. We're here for one another. Like I said, it's a family, and you have to take care of family first. And I think if that comes into play, everything else will fall into line. And I know there's going to be good days and bad days, but we have to remember why we took the oath to wear this badge and do the job that we do. And I think that's the biggest part of it is giving yourself 110% every day to the crew and the public that we serve. This badge means a lot to me. It's just not a symbol, but it's something that I've worked for my entire life. I wear it with pride. It's part of our uniform. Like I said, it's just something that as young kids we've always looked up to the firemen or the police officers that have always been in their Class B shirts with their badges. It's just something about it is magical. It just really, I feel, sets you apart. And like, you know, sounds silly, but when you look down, it reminds you of why you've worked so hard to get here. You know, it's not just a sticker. It's not a name badge. It's a badge that shows your rank. It shows where you work for, what you do. it's something that you should never, ever forget. I don't care if it's 2 days into your career or 30-something years into your career. Never forget how hard you worked for to earn that badge. I honestly could say one of the things I would like to pass on is never miss an opportunity to learn something new. If it's going to a class, asking a question, do it. It'll only make you a better person and a better firefighter overall. And also take ownership in what you do, as far as like keeping your apparatus clean, keeping the station clean. Treat it like it's yours, because it is yours. And don't forget, kind of goes back to the badge, don't forget how hard you worked to get here. These apparatus and the stations that we are allowed to drive and to live in should be treated with respect and care. These are our homes. That's the way they should be treated. They should be treated with, like I said, care and respect.
All right, great. Jason Murphy, engineer at 24B Shift. Thank you very much for spending some time with us today, and thanks for sharing your knowledge with us today.
Thank you for having me.